So let's talk about a really powerful idea. The thought that the chatter inside your head, it isn't just random noise. It's actually the silent architect of your reality. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how that works. Okay, let's just start with a simple question. I mean, you've seen this, right? Two people, same town, same economy, same basic set of circumstances. Yet one of them seems to catch every single break while the other feels like they're just constantly hitting a wall. Is that just luck? Or is there something else going on? Well, a lot of the time, the difference really just boils down to an invisible filter, the lens through which we see the world. For one person, it's a lens of limitation. You know the feeling? Now I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little mystical, a little bit like magic, maybe a little too out there. But what if it's not magic at all? What if there's a real, actual mechanism behind this whole thing? Let's get into the mechanics. I mean, you've seen these words all over social media, right? Manifesting, the law of attraction. They become so cliches, making it sound like you can just wish for a Ferrari and it'll pop up in your driveway. And that gets us to the really important question here. Is all of this just feel-good thinking? You know, just motivational fluff? Or is there an actual biological process happening inside our skulls that explains why our focus can so dramatically change our lives? Well, it turns out the answer has a name, the reticular activating system, or the RAS for short. The easiest way to think of it is like your brain's own personal bouncer. It stands at the velvet rope of your consciousness, and it decides which bits of information get in and which have to wait outside. And this is the absolute key. Your RAS does not magically create things out of thin air. What it does is select what you notice from the millions of data points bombarding you every second. So if you're constantly thinking life is unfair, you've basically programmed your RAS to be a detective for injustice. And trust me, it will find all the evidence you need to prove you're right. What's so wild is that this modern brain science connects perfectly with some very, very old wisdom. And maybe the best way to understand this whole thing is through a really simple but powerful metaphor. The thinker James Allen said it perfectly over 100 years ago. Your mind is a garden, and the weeds, those are your negative, limiting, fearful thoughts. You don't have to do anything to make them grow. They just show up. If you just neglect your mental garden, chaos is what you get. It's the default set. So this gives us a really clear game plan for becoming active gardeners of our minds. First, you have to plant good seeds. Norman Vincent Peale called this expectancy. You actively start looking for good outcomes. Second, you've got to pull out the weeds. You have to actively remove that negativity. And third, just as Stephen Covey taught, you have to focus your precious energy only on the things you can actually influence. Okay, that all sounds great in principle, right? Be a gardener, don't let the weeds take over. But how do you actually do that? You know, when the bills are piling up, work is crazy, life is just happening. How are you supposed to find the time to tend your mental garden? Well, the answer comes from a much more modern framework, and it makes all of this incredibly practical. It all comes down to realizing one simple truth. You are the sum of your daily habits. James Clear, in his work on habits, really gave us the key. See, you don't change your life by trying to force new thoughts. It doesn't work that way. Instead, every tiny little action you take, reading one page, going for a 5-minute walk, making one healthy choice, is a vote for the person you want to become. And over time, those votes build a new identity. And that new identity, it starts to have new thoughts, automatically. Clear. This idea is as old as the hills. This isn't some new age. This ancient proverb tells us the exact same thing. It's not just about your conscious mind, it's about what you believe in your heart, your deep subconscious identity. That belief is what really shapes who you are and what you experience in the world. So here's the bottom line. We have to stop treating our thoughts like they're just harmless clouds floating through our minds. They are not passive observers. They are active. They are commands. We are giving our brains filtering mental room. We're building palaces of possibility, while others are busy designing prisons of limitation. Which leaves us with one final and really personal question. Just take an honest look at your life, at your results, at how you feel. It's all a reflection of the mental structure you've been building. So what blueprint are you designing?
I've been writing this question all week, while going through the stack of sources.
Oh, yeah.
It's a simple scenario, but the more you think about it, the more uncomfortable it gets.
Okay. I'm listening.
You have two people, they live in the same city, they're dealing with the same crazy economy, sitting in the same
Variables.
Exactly. And yet one of them just seems to walk through walls. Doors open, opportunities just, I don't know, land in their lap.
While the other one feels trapped.
Completely trapped, like the walls are slowly closing in.
It's the classic tale of two realities. And usually the conversation just stops there.
Right. People jump to the easy answers.
The easy answers. It's luck, or it's privilege, or destiny. And look, those are real factors. We're not saying they don't exist.
Of course not.
But if you stop there, you miss the most powerful variable in the entire equation.
And that's what we're getting into today. Not the external factors, but the internal machinery. We're doing a deep dive into what we're calling the magnetic mind.
Would be. If your conscious mind tried to process all of that at once, you'd have a seizure. You'd completely short circuit.
So the brain has to ignore almost everything just to function.
Precisely. It filters.
I've been wrestling with this question all week, while going through the stack of sources.
Oh, yeah.
It's a simple scenario, but the more you think about it, the more uncomfortable it gets.
Okay. I'm listening.
You have two people, they live in the same city, they're dealing with the same crazy economy, sitting in the same traffic, basically facing the same chaos.
Right. The same external variables.
Exactly. And yet one of them just seems to walk through walls. Doors open, opportunities just, I don't know, land in their lap.
While the other one feels trapped.
Completely trapped, like the walls are slowly closing in.
It's the classic tale of two realities. And usually the conversation just stops there.
Right. People jump to the easy answers.
The easy answers. It's luck, or it's privilege, or destiny. And look, those are real factors. We're not saying they don't exist.
Of course not.
But if you stop there, you miss the most powerful variable in the entire equation.
And that's what we're getting into today. Not the external factors, but the internal machinery. We're doing a deep dive into what we're calling the magnetic mind.
And the core idea here is that your thoughts aren't just, passive observations. They're actively architecting what you notice, what you ignore, and ultimately the reality you live in.
Architecting is absolutely the perfect for it. This isn't just about thinking happy thoughts.
Not at all.
And the sources we've pulled for this, it's a really unique blend. It's like we've assembled the Avengers of mindset, but from totally different eras and disciplines.
It's a heavy stack. I mean, on one side, you've got hard neuroscience.
Yep.
Then you swing over to the behavioral science of people like James Clear and Stephen Covey.
The practical stuff.
And then we go way back to James Allen's philosophy from 1903 and even ancient biblical texts. It's a real collision of the scientific and the spiritual.
And that's why I love this topic, because usually those camps, they just don't talk to each other.
Never.
The neuroscientist thinks the philosopher is, vague. Yeah. And the philosopher thinks the scientist is too sterile.
But when you layer them on top of each other, like we're doing today, you see they're describing the exact same mechanism. They're just using different vocabularies.
So let's start where I think we have to start, with the skeptics.
Okay.
Because I know as soon as we say magnetic mind, or God forbid, law of attraction, half our listeners lean in and the other half are just rolling their eyes.
Thinking this is going to be about wishing for a Ferrari.
Exactly.
Which is fair. Social media has absolutely butchered these concepts. It's turned deep psychological truths into manifestation memes.
It really has.
But if we strip away the Instagram filter and just look at the biology, we find something very, very mechanical. We have to start with the hardware.
You mean the brain itself?
The brain itself. Specifically the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, I've heard this term thrown around constantly in self-help circles, but it's usually treated like some magical on switch. Let's get technical. What is actually happening here?
So think of the RAS, not as a creator, but as a filter. It's a bundle of nerves at our brainstem.
A filter, okay.
Yeah, and here's the problem your brain has to solve. At any given moment, your senses are taking in millions of bits of data. The hum of your computer, the feeling of your clothes, the temperature in the room.
It's an overwhelming amount of information.
It would be. If your conscious mind tried to process all of that at once, you'd have a seizure. You'd completely short circuit.
So the brain has to ignore almost everything just to function.
Precisely. It filters out 99.9% of reality so you can focus on the tiny fraction that matters.
Yeah.
And the RAS is the gatekeeper. It decides what gets through your conscious awareness and what just gets deleted.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does it know what matters? Who tells the gatekeeper who's on the VIP list?
You do.
Me.
You do.
Yeah.
And you do it through repetition and emotional intensity. The classic example is the cocktail party effect.
I think I know this one.
You're in a loud room, music, 50 conversations happening at once. It's just a wall of noise. But if someone across the room whispers your name,
You hear it instantly. It just cuts through everything.
it snaps you to attention. Because your RAS has programmed your name as high-value data. It hunts for it. Now, apply that to your life.
Ow.
Your dominant thought loop, the thing you are constantly repeating to yourself with emotion is, people are rude, or I never catch a break.
You've just programmed the RAS to hunt for rejection.
You've given it its marching orders.
This is the scary part for me. It implies that the so-called unlucky person isn't necessarily unlucky. They're just hyper efficient at spotting bad luck.
And completely blind to the good luck.
Blah.
Blind is the operative word. This is what we call a scotoma, a literal blind spot. If you believe the world is unfair, you might not see the opportunity standing right in front of you. Your eyes capture the data, but the RAS just deletes it before it hits your conscious mind because it doesn't match the internal program.
Yeah, so in a very real biological sense, we are trapped in a feedback loop of our own making.
Yes.
The world hasn't changed, the economy is the same, the traffic is the same, but the data we are allowed to perceive is totally different.
And that's the architect concept in a nutshell. You are designing the blueprint of what you see. And since you only act on what you see, you end up creating a reality that perfectly matches that blueprint.
Okay, so that's the hardware. I want to install the software now. This brings us to James Allen and As a Man Thinketh.
A masterpiece.
Filtering the data and the garden determining the signals we broadcast. But I want to get practical because it's easy to say,
Be cultivated or it can be allowed to run wild.
right.
But here's the kicker, and this is the part that usually catches people off guard. If you do nothing,
Yeah, so in a very real biological sense, we are trapped in a feedback loop of our own making.
yes,
The world hasn't changed, the economy is the same, the traffic is the same, but the data we are allowed to perceive is totally different.
and that's the architect concept in a nutshell. You are designing the blueprint of what you see. And since you only act on what you see, you end up creating a reality that perfectly matches that blueprint.
Okay, so that's the hardware. I want to install the software now. This brings us to James Allen and As a Man Thinketh.
A masterpiece.
He wrote this in 1903, which I find just fascinating because he didn't have fMRI machines. He didn't know about the RAS, but he understood the garden.
It's an incredible work of pure observation. Allen's metaphor is that the mind is a garden. It can be intelligently cultivated or it can be allowed to run wild.
Right.
But here's the kicker, and this is the part that usually catches people off guard. If you do nothing, the garden doesn't stay empty.
Weeds grow automatically.
Exactly. Weeds are the default state of neglect. You don't have to try to be negative. You don't have to try to be anxious or resentful. Just leave your mind alone, let it graze on the nightly news or doom scroll social media.
And the weeds will take over.
They absolutely will.
Yeah.
Flowers, things like optimism, strategy, gratitude, those require intentional planting.
Allen has this one line that, it felt like a slap in the face when I read it. I actually had to put the book down.
I think I know the one you mean.
He says, "We do not attract what we want, we attract what we are."
It's brutal, isn't it? It just completely dismantles the wishful thinking version of this whole idea.
It really does. Because I can want to be successful or I can want a great relationship. But Allen is saying that if my internal garden, my character, my subconscious, is full of insecurity or judgment.
That's what you're actually broadcasting. It's about resonance.
Resonance.
Think about it in terms of that emotional energy we mentioned from the Norman Vincent Peale readings.
Yeah.
People often dismiss Peale as just the positive thinking guy,
Yeah, that's the reputation.
but he was really talking about expectancy. When you walk into a room, you are broadcasting a signal.
I've seen this happen in meetings 1,000 times. Someone walks in, they haven't said a word, but you can feel they expect to be ignored.
How do you feel it? What do you see?
Their shoulders are hunched, they won't make eye contact, they just shrink.
They're physically enacting the weed in their mind. And because we're social animals, we pick up on that signal instantly. And we treat them the way they expect to be treated.
We ignore them.
We ignore them. And then they go home and what do they say?
See? Nobody listened to me.
The feedback loop is complete. But the reverse is true. If you cultivate a mind of contribution, if you walk in thinking, I have value to add here, your posture opens up.
your micro expressions change.
And people are drawn to that.
They're drawn to it. You become magnetic, not because of magic, but because your internal state is architecting your external social reality.
Okay, so we have the RAS filtering the data and the garden determining the signals we broadcast. But I want to get practical because it's easy to say change your thoughts, but that can feel like trying to grab smoke. How do we actually do this?
This is where we have to build the bridge between thinking and doing. And for me, the best bridge I've found in the sources is a combination of Stephen Covey and James Clear.
I love this pairing. You've got Covey giving us the high-level strategy with the circles, and then Clear comes in with the tactics from Atomic Habits.
Exactly. Let's start with Covey. He makes this amazing distinction between the circle of concern,
Which is everything you worry about but can't control. The economy, politics, the weather.
right? And then there's the circle of influence, which is what you can actually change. Your actions, your attitude.
The trap, of course, is that most of us get stuck in the circle of concern. We just fixate on problems we can't solve.
And when you fixate on what you can't control, you are training your RAS to see helplessness everywhere. You are building a mental prison. I can't fix the economy, so I'm stuck. And your influence just shrinks.
So how do we break out of that? This is where James Clear comes in.
Right. Because Clear argues you can't just think your way into a new identity. You have to act your way there.
I love his line, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
That's the missing link for so many people. They try to stand in front of a mirror and affirm, I'm a healthy person, but then they go sit on the couch for 8 hours.
And the brain knows you're lying.
The brain needs evidence. If you want to change the filter, you have to feed the RAS new data. You don't have to go run a marathon.
No.
You just put on your running shoes and walk out the door. That is a vote. You are casting a physical vote that says, I am the kind of person who moves.
And if you do that enough times, the guardian starts to change. You aren't just weeding anymore. You're actually planting structural reinforcements.
Right. It's a reciprocal loop. The thought inspires the action, but the action cements the thought. If you feel unlucky, but you force yourself to send one networking email, just one, you have cast a vote against that belief. You've just cracked the door open.
I like the idea of the vote because it takes all the pressure off. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to win the election.
You just need 51% of the votes to go toward the new identity.
You're architecting the new self brick by brick, vote by vote.
Exactly.
But there is one more layer to this whole stack. And I think it's maybe the most important one because without it, you could be a very efficient architect building a house on a swamp.
We need to talk about the deeper blueprints, the ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
This is where the whole thing gets really profound. We go back to a text like Proverbs, and you see the line, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
And we have to pause on that word, heart.
We have to. In the ancient Hebrew context, the heart wasn't just the seat of emotions like we think of it. It was the center of the will, the subconscious mind.
So it's not talking about the fleeting thought you have when someone cuts you off in traffic. It's talking about your deep core operating system.
It's the bedrock beliefs. You can use willpower to think positive on the surface level all day long, but if your heart, your subconscious identity, believes you are unworthy or incapable,
That deep belief will win every single time.
every time, it'll override the RAS, it will sabotage the habits, it's the foundation of the whole structure.
So how do we even get down to that level? The sources brought up Philippians 4.8, which honestly reads like a cognitive behavioral therapy manual written 2,000 years ago.
It really does. It's the mental diet. It literally lists specific qualities, whatever's true, noble, right, pure, and says, dwell on these things.
It's an instruction manual for the architect.
It's saying, be careful what materials you bring to the construction site. Because if you build your house out of garbage materials, rumors, fear, cynicism,
What else will eventually collapse?
and you will have to live in the ruins. That is the reality.
I also want to touch on Miles Monroe's contribution here because he brings in the concept of purpose. I feel like without purpose, this whole magnetic
But that's a huge danger,
becomes just how do I get what I want?
right? You can be a very effective magnet for all the wrong things. Monroe argues that purpose is the governing blueprint. It tells the RAS that it filters for significance, not just for success.
It anchors.
Exactly. Without purpose, your mind is a ship with a powerful engine but no rudder. You might go fast, you might attract a lot of attention, but you're just going in circles. Purpose aligns the conscious thought, the subconscious heart, and the daily habits into a single powerful vector.
So let's try to synthesize purpose as the ultimate blueprint.
If you boil it all down, the single takeaway is agency.
Magnet doesn't create metal. The metal is already there. It just finds it.
That is the distinction to remember. The opportunities, the joy, the connections, they are already out there. They're in the pile of reality right now. But if your magnet is turned off, or if it's set to repel, you will walk right past them and then claim they don't exist.
Which puts the responsibility squarely back on the listener, which is, it's empowering, but it's also a lot of pressure.
It is pressure, but it's the good kind. It's the pressure an artist feels staring at a blank canvas, not the pressure a prisoner feels staring at a wall.
So before we wrap this up, I know you had a specific thought, a sort of challenge that you wanted to leave our listeners with, something to chew on.
Yeah, I do. I want you to try a mental
Oof.
because the truth is you are living in the scenery go by. But all of these sources from every angle, you are living in the scenery go by. But all of these sources from every angle are screaming at us that we are not passengers. We are the architects.
That magnet metaphor really stuck with me. A magnet doesn't create metal. The metal is already there. It just finds it.
That is the distinction to remember. The opportunities, the joy, the connections, they are already out there. They're in the pile of reality right now. But if your magnet is turned off, or if it's set to repel, you will walk right past them and then claim they don't exist.
Which puts the responsibility squarely back on the listener, which is, it's empowering, but it's also a lot of pressure.
It is pressure, but it's the good kind. It's the pressure an artist feels staring at a blank canvas, not the pressure a prisoner feels staring at a wall.
So before we wrap this up, I know you had a specific thought, a sort of challenge that you wanted to leave our listeners with, something to chew on.
Yeah, I do. I want you to try a mental exercise. Imagine that your life, your physical reality, your relationships, your career is a house. And imagine that this house was built strictly and only using the materials of your dominant thoughts from the last 30 days. Every worry was a brick. Every moment of gratitude was a window. Every cynical comment was a crack in the foundation.
Okay, I'm visualizing it.
Now ask yourself, would you want to live in that house? Is it a palace where you can grow, or is it a prison with no windows?
Oof.
Because the truth is you are living in it. You built it. And if you don't like the layout, the good news is that you are the architect. You can pick up the pencil and start drawing a new blueprint right now.
Wow. That is, honestly, that's going to stick with me for a while. A thought audit seems necessary this weekend.
It's the most important work you can possibly do.
Well, on that very provocative note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for listening. And remember, check your blueprints. We'll see you next time.